Hi guys, I'm Kasha. Welcome to the channel and welcome as always to our coffee times. And today we are back to talk movies. For today I thought we would do something a little bit more informal, kind of more of a video, sitting down just casually talking to you guys about something a little bit more personal so you can get to know me a little bit better.
It's coffee time.
I have seen that some people have done videos kind of talking about movies that have had an impact in their lives, movies that change them. And I wanted to do something similar because I think it's a great way of getting to know someone. But instead of going straight to newer movies or movies from when I was a little bit older that really had an impact on me, I thought we would go really back in time to small tiny me. So this is going to be kind of the movies that made me, in a way. You know guys, I love that show on Netflix, and I just decided to pick some movies that I remember from my childhood that had an impact in one way or another, movies that I have anecdotes from, and kind of guide you through that. And I think it's going to be a great way for you maybe to get to know me a little bit better and also maybe understand why I'm so messed up. So let's go. I would like to start this video talking to you guys about what I watched before horror. Obviously, I was a kid once. And even though I'm kind of still am a kid nowadays, but the first ever movie that I remember physically seeing in the cinema is The Beauty and the Beast. And that is part of why I've always really loved this movie. Also because I remember the whole experience. It was like a really nice cinema. It was the first time I was getting like my popcorn, and it was just like the greatest experience. I went with my cousin that has always been like a brother to me, and I also was happy to see Belle because she loved books and I loved books, so I kind of saw myself in her. And you know, now that I'm older and I look back, I think that Beauty and the Beast is a great story because it is teaching girls that you don't have to be saved, you can save the beast yourself, and it's not one of those princesses in distress. But if I had to pick a Disney movie that really had an impact on me and that I have rewatched countless times when I was a kid, like I don't know how I didn't burn that VHS tape, but that is The Lion King. So even then I already loved coming of age stories because here we have Simba that kind of has to take over after his father, and he's lost and he doesn't know what to believe, and it is that struggle of having to grow up. It is about the challenges, you know, of becoming the next in line, the challenges of losing a loved one. No, we're never gonna get over that scene. It's still sad. It also has such a great setting, you know, in nature. It has such a powerful score, and I was obsessed with all the songs. Please keep in mind, I did watch these movies in Spanish and I knew all the songs in Spanish. Probably if I would rewatch it now in Spanish, I might still remember most of them because I knew everything by heart, every single song. And this was a movie that I would watch constantly. So this for me was my favorite Disney movie growing up. Now let's move on from Disney and let's take a look at other movies that left an impact or that I remember fondly when I was growing up. The first one is a movie that I remember watching as well many times with my cousin that I've mentioned before. We grew up together, we were in the same town, and we were always hanging out together, so he has always been like a brother to me. And one of the movies that we loved to watch a lot was The Karate Kid. In this martial arts drama film, teenager Daniel LaRusso is bullied by Johnny Lawrence, who is adept at martial arts. So in order to defend himself from the bullies, he ends up learning the martial art of karate with Mr. Miyagi. And Miyagi was everything for us. We loved him, we loved his smile, we always laughed so much with him. And Karate Kid is a movie that I really remember fondly. And when I had like some health issues some years back, I remember buying the trilogy of Karate Kid and just rewatching it and having a blast. And you know, it's one of those movies that I could rewatch anytime. This movie is also great because it has many great messages. We do explore bullying, but we also learn about friendship and perseverance in this movie. I guess you could say this is the Rocky for teenagers. If we are talking now about movies that I was obsessed with, and obsessed with capital letters and exclamation mark, we have to talk about The Never Ending Story, because I took my VHS copy of the movie, I took a notebook, and I kid you not, I started watching the movie and pausing it, and in my notebook I started writing down the whole script, like the character name and what they were saying, to the point where I had the whole script in my notebook by pausing a VHS tape. No subtitles, nothing like that. And I knew the script by heart. That is the level of obsession that I achieved with this movie. It was beautiful, it was sad, it was heartbreaking, it was magical. I don't know, there was something about this movie. I was really obsessed and I would watch it all the time. It's probably one of the movies I watched the most in my life, at least when I was younger, and I would never forget this movie. It's actually based on a novel from 1979 by Michael Ende, which, you know, was written in German originally. And it's funny because there were a lot of things from my childhood, like personal things, that kind of pointed to Germany, and then I ended up coming to live here, so it's kind of weird. In this story we follow Bastian, which a lot of kids could relate to him. He thought that life and school, everything was kind of boring, and he was looking for a different type of adventure, and he found this old book at a store and started reading it and found himself in the world of Fantasia. And this movie, I don't know, there were so many things that I absolutely loved about this movie, and it made me have all of this imagination. You know, this movie was just fantastic. I don't know, I still have rewatched this movie as an adult and I still love it as much. I don't know about younger generations watching it, because obviously the special effects, some of them have not aged that well, but it also is another movie that had so many good messages. It was imaginative and it does not shy away when it comes to show grief and things that were horrifying, and that probably now parents think like, oh my god, how can you do that in a movie for kids? Well, you know, they need to know that life is not peachy, okay? It was just fantastic. The soundtrack, the visuals, everything, especially for the time when it came out, it was just, for me, it really made an impact. Now let's talk about another one of my absolute favorite movies growing up, and that I had the pleasure to watch actually at the cinema on the starting weekend, and that is Jurassic Park. I remember they announced Jurassic Park and my hometown had a very small cinema. They only had 3 rooms and I used to go there with my parents. So my dad and I really wanted to watch Jurassic Park, and we went and queued for hours. Like, the queue went around the building, and I come from a small town. Like I said, it was not even a big city, and we really wanted to see that first screening of the movie. And when we got to get the tickets, finally, after queuing for a long time, they told us that sadly they were sold out. And I remember my dad asked to speak to a manager and the manager came out, and my dad kind of used me and my puppy eyes, and he said, oh, my daughter really wants to watch this movie and we didn't get tickets and blah blah blah. I don't know how he managed. My recollection of events is a little bit blurry because I was young, but we ended up being allowed to go into the room to watch the movie. I believe we had to end up sitting somewhere on the stairs because obviously all the seats were taken, but the experience and the memories that I have going with my dad for the opening, you know, show to watch Jurassic Park, I just will always cherish that. Recently, Netflix released a new season of Movies That Made Us, and they made an episode on Jurassic Park, and I strongly recommend you to check it out because it has been my absolute favorite episode of the Movies That Made Us. I had a blast watching it. And if you don't know what Jurassic Park is about, I mean, you probably know, but it's about this guy that creates an island, and he starts kind of bringing back to life the dinosaurs, and he wants to make a theme park, and his vision is that people are going to be able to come to the park and see the dinosaurs. But of course something goes wrong. Some of the dinosaurs get loose, and everybody that's on that island is in immediate danger. For the time, that movie achieved something that was the first time that you could see a dinosaur in CGI. It was the very first time, and they combined CGI with animatronics. That was the original plan, animatronics, but they ended up making a huge discovery, and it was the first time that they were able to use CGI for the creatures in a movie. So it was a breakthrough for the cinema. And like I said, I really recommend you to check out that episode on Netflix about it, because it was just so much fun to see. So now we're moving to my first horror movies. I mean, you could consider Jurassic Park a little bit of horror, but the very first movies that I remember, it's hard to know which one came first, but I remember that I went to my cousin for a sleepover, in this case my female cousins, and we were just three girls and we wanted to watch a horror movie. I think I was around 8 or 9, and we decided to watch Bram Stoker's Dracula because my uncle had that on VHS, so we just put it on, you know, it's what kids do. And this movie had such a huge impact in my life, and it's probably the reason why I'm obsessed with the blood and vampires. It's because, and I'm not gonna spoil the movie, but one of the first scenes we see Blood coming back from war, and when he gets home some things have happened. He's mad, he's angry, and he sticks his sword in a cross, and then blood starts to come from all over the place. And that image of just blood pouring in, like, I would always remember that as the moment that I fell in love with horror, with blood and vampires. And that movie, you can argue the CGI is so great but I still watch that movie and I still have a blast watching it. And Gary Oldman in this movie is just out of this world, fantastic, and I will never forget it. The movie is of course based on the 1897 novel Dracula by Bram Stoker that is still up to date, one of my favorite classic novels. I just love the way that it is edited and put together with journals and all of that, and letters and, you know, all of these media. But even though the movie, like I said, had its flaws, including Keanu Reeves' accent, which we will just forgive him for that. But in the end, Dracula is nothing but a big love story, and how far Count Dracula is gonna go in order to find Mina again. And apart from Dracula, when I was at my uncle's place, I also saw that he had other VHS movies that were horror, and I asked if I could borrow them, and he said yes. So now let's talk about those two movies, because those are also some of my very first horror movie experiences. And the first one is The Exorcist. The Exorcist is another movie that I'm never going to forget, and I think this is one of those that if you watch it today, it still holds, you know, its place. This is a supernatural horror film that, as the title implies, is going to show us an exorcism. And this movie was really praised for the technicality of it, for the special effects that we got in this movie. And I think that this is a movie that had an impact of a lot of people, especially if people watched it when it came out in the 70s. This movie is about a young girl called Regan that after playing with the Ouija board starts to kind of exhibit weird behavior. So the family thinks that something's wrong with her, that she might be possessed, so they call a priest to kind of perform an exorcism. And like I said, this movie is amazing. If you have not watched it yet, you can still watch it today and still have a great experience. And the other movie that I borrowed from my uncle on VHS was Psycho from 1960, and I don't know if I would have come across this movie so early on, you know, as a maybe 9-year-old girl, because obviously it's a black and white older movie, and of course my parents would not have let me watch this. I don't even know how they didn't realize that my uncle had given me these VHS tapes, but hey, whatever. I had a blast with them. This is a psychological horror thriller that we all know. It has been remade, but I'm not a huge fan of the remake. I still love the original, and it is about this woman that is running away and ends up hiding in a hotel run by this really weird guy called Norman Bates, and that's about it. That's what I can tell you. There might be people that still have not watched this classic, I don't know, so I don't want to spoil it for you, but this was such a good psychological movie that had such a great twist, and you can see why Hitchcock was a master of horror. The way that the tension is being built in this movie until you get to the climax is something that we don't see often in movies anymore, because it feels like movies now have to give you something like punches from the beginning, otherwise you lose interest. And I really appreciate some of those older classics that really take their time to build the tension, to build suspense, to really keep you at the edge of your seat until they make the big reveal. So this is one of those, if you're interested in that type of movies that are a little bit more slow paced but really building that suspense until the end. Now let's talk about a movie that I have also rewatched so many times, and it's a movie that I've known since my childhood as well, and that I also know all the songs from, and that is Nightmare Before Christmas. When I watched this movie for the first time, I felt like it was a movie made for me. I felt like this was exactly my type of movie. It also combines two things that I enjoy, which is Christmas and Halloween. Even though I love Halloween so much, and it's obviously one of my favorite times of the year, I've always loved Christmas because my parents, my family were always really close, and we always had big Christmas celebrations. So I do have good memories of Christmas. And this movie combines both, and it's a movie that you can watch for Christmas and for Halloween. This movie, many people assume that was directed by Tim Burton, but it wasn't. It comes from an idea from Tim Burton, and he kind of gave his opinion as they were making the movie, but he was not as involved as many people think. The problem is it's called Tim Burton's A Nightmare Before Christmas, but there is an episode again on Netflix on the movies that made us about this movie where they explain everything, and I think it's going to be an eye-opener for a lot of people. Now this movie is made completely with stop motion, which is so much work, like so much work, and the way that they made these characters and brought them to life, it's amazing. If you watch any documentaries on this movie, you're gonna see all the hard work that it takes. In this movie, we are in Halloween Town, and we meet Jack Skellington, and he's kind of tired of the same thing every year, and he's looking for something new. He's bored, and he ends up coming across Christmas Town and discovering Christmas, and he gets really excited and he wants to make Christmas too, but he doesn't know how to. It's just so sweet. It's just so innocent in a way, even though, you know, Jack is not innocent, but I just love the character so much from this movie. And yeah, if you have not watched it, which I would be really surprised, please do give it a try. I think it's still great to watch it nowadays, even though it's a stop motion, so a lot of people might not be used to that anymore since we have, you know, computer generated cartoons nowadays. But there's something about this movie that it's just so nostalgic to me. As I was growing up, I remember I watched a lot of movies with my dad. He loved like martial arts movies and other type of movies that my mom didn't watch. And thanks to him, I did watch a lot of movies that I ended up loving. And one of them is one of my favorite movies as well from growing up, and that is Terminator 2: Judgment Day. In this movie, we follow Sarah Connor and her 10-year-old son, John, as they are running away from a new improved Terminator. And part 2 is my favorite. Now, it has as much action as the first one, but visually, I feel like the second one gave me a lot more. And Terminator 2 really made me fall in love with Arnold and with Edward Furlong. And I really started watching everything by these two actors. Sadly, Edward Furlong's career has not been that successful, but we have Brain Scanner, which I absolutely love that movie, and I could have included in this list, but I didn't want to make this list too long. But that's another movie that for me was really important growing up. And of course, Pet Sematary 2, which, you know, campy, but we love it, cheesy, but we're here for it. But sadly, you know, he's not had the best career after that. But Terminator 2 really made me fall in love with this type of movies and with Arnold, and I started watching more action movies that I have not really watched before, and I have my dad to thank for that. This movie was kind of like a combination between futuristic movie and kind of 90s flavor movie, and it also is a movie that influenced others when it comes to the special effects and the CGI, and it brought a lot of new things to the table. So if you've not watched the Terminator franchise, which would be a bit weird, I recommend you basically to watch just 1 and 2. Those are the ones you need, actually. You don't need more than that. And we're gonna end this with number 10, which is one of the movies that has influenced me the most, I guess. One of the movies that caused such an impact. I became obsessed with this movie to the point where I would watch it every day, and my mom even got worried because she thought this movie was really dark and obscure, and she didn't really want me to watch it, but it was too late. I had already discovered this movie the moment it came out. Again, thanks to my dad, because he's the one that, I think he rented the movie and we watched it together, and that is The Crow, or as I like to call it, the best love story ever, together with Dracula. Like, for me, Dracula and The Crow are kind of in a tie when it comes to favorite movie. It's really hard to choose. Actually, I have a top 3 or 4, I guess, of favorite movies, and it's just really hard to pick just one. But I remember the first time that I watched The Crow, and there was something about this movie. The soundtrack, the visuals, everything was so dark, and there was something about Brandon Lee's performance that it was just so mesmerizing, and I became obsessed. And I've always loved movies about revenge and movies about grief, and this is a movie that is exactly that, is love, grief, and revenge. So from an early age, I already, you know, went towards those type of movies, I guess, and that has really not changed. So this movie is actually based on the comics by James O'Barr, but the comics are very different from the movie. So basically, Alex Proyas, that directed the movie, took the idea of the comic and made it his own. And I have read the comics and I really enjoy them, but it's the movie, the way that the story is told in the movie, that really had an impact for me. I think also all the characters in the movie are just so well shaped, and the movie is basically about this couple that is about to get married, and they're celebrating Devil's Night when a group of strangers come into their apartment, like a kind of a home invasion, and they basically torture them and end up killing them. So Eric, the boyfriend, comes back from the land of the dead to take revenge on the people that killed him and his fiance. That's the main pitch. But this movie is so much more than that. It has so many good messages and values also when it comes to Darla and her story. And And I never get tired of this movie. I think the script is fantastic, the visuals, everything. I think this movie, even though there have been so many rumors about reboots, I don't know if a reboot would really work. However, I would not be opposed to see a new take on The Crow if we get an R-rated version of it, and if the director and, you know, of course the guy playing Eric Draven fit the part. I would not be completely opposed, but we're never gonna get the magic that Brandon Lee brought to the character. And I know that this movie has received a lot of cult followers because of the sad, tragic news of Brandon Lee passing away during the filming of the movie. But when I watched this movie, I didn't even know that had happened. I watched this movie when it came out with my dad, and I knew, like, I found out about that later when I started digging deeper into the movie and behind the scenes and things like that, which back in the day it wasn't as easy as it is nowadays. But I also remember that I went straight to the store to grab the soundtrack in CD and everything, because I just became obsessed with the movie. And also, since I watched this movie, one of the things that I always like to tell myself is it can't rain all the time. That simple sentence for me has a lot of meaning, and I think if I would ever get tattoos, that's probably the sentence that I would tattoo, because it just has so much meaning for me. Alright guys, I hope that you enjoyed these other type of video in which I just wanted to sit down and kind of have a more relaxed conversation with you guys and let you know some movies that I watched when I was young that kind of had an impact on me, that I was obsessed with, and one way or another have kind of shaped me into the human that I am today, and have probably also shaped my tastes when it comes to movies and other things. So I hope that you enjoyed it. Let me know down below if you like these type of videos, because I can do more kind of relaxed talk about movies videos, as well as other type of content like I always do, recommendations and movie reviews. So let me know if you also like these kind of more relaxed videos. And also, please let me know maybe a list of 5 of the movies that you remember from your childhood that had an impact on you, or your first horror movie that you ever saw. Let's talk about it in the comments. Thanks so much for watching, you guys. Please give the video a big thumbs up for support, and I hope to see you all as always in our next coffee time. Bye.